Welcome, Japanese woodblock print collectors and enthusiasts. Our woodblock print gallery is based in California, so I'm no stranger to earthquakes. And in California, we blame earthquakes on the science of plate tectonics. But in Japan, there was a myth that a giant underground catfish, or Namazu, caused earthquakes. Today, I thought it would be fun and educational to explore this popular legend and look at some of the woodblock prints. So, how did the catfish get associated with earthquakes? Starting in the 1700s, the Namazu had been depicted in Otsu-e, or pictures from the city of Otsu. And there were a lot of travelers passing through Otsu, and the townspeople sold them cheaply produced folk art like this. And this was very simple art and not anywhere near the quality or complexity of the woodblock prints we usually talk about. In Japanese mythology, it was believed that the Namazu lived underground, deep below Japan, and were kept under control by the thunder god Kashima, with a large rock, the Kaname-ishi. Quick science fact: in the 1800s, an eel fisherman reported unusually active catfish in a river, which he thought predicted an earthquake. Later that night, the earthquake struck, and this was actually documented and is the earliest known claim that catfish can predict earthquakes. In the 1930s, Japanese seismologists Shinkishi Hatai and Noboru Abe demonstrated that catfish in aquariums showed increased agitation several hours before earthquakes occurred and were able to predict quakes with 80% accuracy. This brings us to the great Ansei Tokai earthquake, which struck on December 23, 1854. It was an 8.4 magnitude quake and caused a tsunami and 7,000 to 10,000 deaths. Here is a map showing the places that were damaged. And here is a print of the Yoshiwara, or pleasure district, being destroyed during the earthquake. The Great Ansei earthquake is said to have occurred after Kashima was out of town and left the god of fishing and commerce, Ebisu, in charge. Unfortunately, Ebisu fell asleep and let the catfish escape. This is one of my favorite Namazu prints. You've got this great big grinning catfish head, and inside the head we see the destruction of the earthquake. Below, the god is sleeping on the stone. This story became very popular, and within days of the earthquake, woodblock prints called Namazu-e, or catfish pictures, started to be sold. Buyers believed the prints were good luck and they would be protected from future earthquakes if the print was in their home. There was a lot of censorship at that time, but due to the havoc created by the earthquake, the censors were distracted, so artists took a chance to illegally create Namazu prints that criticized the government and inequity in society. Most of these catfish prints weren't signed, since the artists didn't want to get into trouble with the Shogunate. Namazu prints fall into a few categories. We have prints showing the catfish being trapped under the Kaname-ishi stone, or trapped under a gourd. We have the catfish dressed like people, enjoying human activities. We have prints showing the catfish attacking or chasing people. We have prints of the catfish being attacked by people. And we have prints of the effects of the catfish on society. This last category is what I find the most interesting, because believe it or not, there was a silver lining to the earthquake damage caused by the Namazu. And that silver lining was wealth redistribution. In this print, we see Kashima riding the catfish and the god of wealth showering down large gold coins on the people below. Even though the Namazu caused the disaster, it was also celebrated as an avenger of social injustice. The rich people of Tokyo had hoarded their wealth, but due to the earthquake, it supposedly forced them to pay for rebuilding efforts. In this print, we see the backdrop of the earthquake, and in the foreground, 3 rich men literally shitting out their wealth. And here's another of money being taken from the rich and given to the workers. I think it's interesting that the Japanese can take such a terrible, frightening disaster and find optimism and humor in it. As you can imagine, many working class people profited as a result of the earthquake, such as builders, roofers, carpenters. In this print, you can see all the types of tradespeople who potentially benefited from the quake. In this print, we see the Catfish and the god Kashima taking part in a neck-pulling game, which is this strange game where a band is put around the necks of 2 people, and they try to see if they can pull the other person off balance. Here too, you can see on Kashima's side the people who will suffer, and on the Catfish side, the workers who will benefit from the earthquake. Here's a similar print of 3 drunks, an angry rich man, a laughing artisan, and a crying geisha, all about to eat a catfish. The Namazu-e prints proved quite popular, with somewhere between 300 and 400 different designs printed in the 2 months following the earthquake. I don't see them come up for sale very often, so good for you if you have one in your collection. If you're interested in learning more, the Royal Ontario Museum in Canada has a wonderful album of 87 Namazu-e prints that someone collected 170 years ago. And if you go to Japan, catfish can be seen today on pictures of emergency earthquake preparedness signs and on their earthquake warning mobile app. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Namazu prints. Please like and subscribe, and happy collecting.